Hello, I'm Emma Wallerton. I'm one of the tutors on the Jack Greek Summer School. This video is aimed at beginners students, and as you can see from the screen, its aim is to read through a second passage in Greek. So it will help if you have seen the following videos: Introduction to Greek Grammar by Rowena Hughes, Rosalind Axel on regular verbs and Amy, I am, Ben Gravel on the accusative case and the definite article, Alistair Harden on uses of the genitive and dative, and Henry Cullen on their forms, John Dant on adjectives and os, on the prequel to this video, reading a passage in Greek, Simon Costello talking about the future and imperfect tenses, and Simon again on the aorist tense, Ian Ross on the uses of autos, alter, auto, James Thorne on the third declension, me on a specific type of third declension adjective, and Maria Elpinicki-Oikonomou on the present participle. All of the vocabulary in the passage, bar a couple of words, comes from the videos that I've just listed. It's used in them, so hopefully the words are familiar. The passage itself and the vocabulary list with vocabulary from those videos are up as PDFs on the website, so you can have a look at the passage as a PDF. On that PDF, I've also put the meanings of the words that you haven't met yet. I haven't put them on the same page because you might want to try to figure them out. And I'm not going to tell you immediately what they mean, but one of the things to balance when you're reading through a passage is the joy and the pleasure of working out, oh yeah, that word must mean this because of what the context is, with the frustration that it can cause if you can't work out what a word means. So approach this how you want, look words up if you want to, try to figure them out if you want to. The point is to enjoy reading the passage of Greek. Now you remember that a really important thing to do before you start translating is to read the whole passage. Here it is. Now I'm just going to hide myself so that you can see it properly. And so one thing I recommend that you do in a minute is pause the video and read it through a couple of times, ideally aloud if you can, just to let you know about those words that you haven't met yet. I'll go through them and let you know what type of word they are at least. So if we look first of all at uketi, which occurs twice in the first two lines, that's an adverb. Look at that form, you've got uk, you recognize that, I'm sure. So think about what that could be doing with the eti on the end. Then we've also got ga 3 times and alla, that's an alpha missing on the end of that word in the 5th line there. They're conjunctions, they do slightly different jobs. Alla is perhaps a bit like the word death that you know already. Ga sort of joins a connection to the previous sentence, so see if you can work out what type of connection it's drawing. One other word that I'll just draw your attention to is this word again. Now that's from the verb agor, which you have met, but it's not a form that you've met. If you look at it, you'll realize that straight away. That's not an ending that you've seen. It's not a conjugated form and it's not a participle. So see if you can work out what type of word it is. It is a type of part of verb, and in the present active they will have that ending, if that helps as well. So as I say, pause the video, have a work through the passage, remember to read it all the way through, remember to read that little bit of information that I've given you at the top. I will say that will indicate that this follows on from the previous passage, which was about a good messenger who hears a voice in a field and suddenly Athena's there and she gives him gifts. Okay, so it follows on directly from that. Think about that. It's always good to think about what's happened before in a Greek text. If you're reading a continuous whole in small chunks, think about how to break it down into small bits, etc. Pause the video, have a go, and then when you come back, I'll read it through in Greek and we'll go through it together. So let me first of all read this aloud in Greek. The messenger finds Athena's gifts, but they prove to be unlucky. Hodangalos uketi ten ponen ekuen. Hegar Athena ukete entoi agroien. Hodangalos taktes teas dora hienen. Esan hippos kai sitos. Hodangalos tacheos ton siton epagen. Etelega ton hippon prosten oikian agen. Al ho hippos epugen. Hodangalos ton hippon diokon epesen. Hed Athene esti chalapa epen. Adikos garme ekolasen. Legon de Tutor hoangelos apetanen. Tagartes Atenes Dora en Kakodaimana. Okay, so that's the passage as a whole. Now, one of the things that we discussed in the previous video was looking through to punctuation marks, looking for verbs to see how you can break things down into smaller, more manageable chunks. So I'll go through this sentence by sentence and we can think about how to do that. So here's our first sentence, up to the full stop. Hod angelos uketi ten ponen ekoen, hegal atene uketi entoi agroi en. So if we look through at that, something that leaps out straight away for various reasons, is we've got two clauses. We've got two verbs, ekoen and en. We've got two subjects, ho angelos and he atene. We've also got the sort of mid dot after ekoen. That's the equivalent of a semicolon in printed Greek text. So we've got two clauses with two verbs and two subjects. Now this word gar that we've got in the second one, as I said, that creates a connection. It sort of explains what's going on in the previous clause, gives a reason for it. And so it's often glossed in dictionaries and vocabulary lists as for or something along those lines. So that's the role that's playing there. Now, uketi, if you manage to puzzle that one out, the u is uk, the not, eti means sort of still, so it's no longer, not anymore, something along those lines. If we look at those two verbs as well, we can see ekuen, we've got an augment on the front, but we haven't got a sigma or anything like that. So that's going to be an imperfect tense, and en is the imperfect tense of the verb to be. We've also got entoi agroi, that little prepositional phrase, en with a dative meaning in. So all of those combine to mean the messenger no longer heard the voice, for Athena was no longer in the field. Hod angelos tates theas dora hiuren. So let's look through that again. So simple sentence, we've got the de acting as a connector to the previous sentence. So remember that we could translate that as either and or but. I think here we'll probably go for the more contrasting version, but. Our subject is hod angelos. Tadora is the accusative. That's going to be the direct object of the verb. Teas is a sandwiched genitive. So that's how we've dealt with everything else in the sentence. We've got our nominative, hod angelos, we've got our accusative, Tadora. Now, remember that neuter plurals, as Tadora is, take singular verbs. So if you look at hiuren, we see that singular ending. It could be our subject, but we look at the front, we've got hod angelos. That can only be nominative. So that's got to be our subject. Tadora's got to be our object. So let's have a look at our verb. Our verb is hiuren. So we're going to need to do some work to dismantle this verb. And this is one of the things that we often find ourselves doing when we're translating Greek text. So I cannot help myself. I always refer to this as smashing them with your grammar hammer, because you have to break various bits off. You need to basically take the ending off, and then depending on tense, you're going to need to take possibly an augment off or out of the stem in order to be able to find what it is that you are actually translating, what form you've got and what verb it's from. So which tense is it? Let's have a think. Hiuren, it's got an augment, it's got that en ending. It could be with the en, it could be imperfect, it could be second aorist. So if we can't remember anything else apart from that, we've got an augment, yes, so let's take that off, and then we'll look up either aur or eir or haur or hair, because it's a rough breathing on it. Now, if we look at a dictionary and we look up either of those, we're not going to find a form that's going to help us necessarily identically, but we will see that the verb hiurisko has the aorist stem hiur. So we found it. If you pardon the pun, hiurisko means I find. If you're familiar with the word eureka, that's actually a Greek word originally, heureka. It's the perfect of hiurisko. So it means I have found it. So we've got hiuren, third person singular, aorist from hiurisko, I find. So putting all of that together, the messenger found the goddess's gifts. Or, but the messenger found the goddess's gifts, something like that, to get that de in. Esan hippos kaisitos, that's our next sentence. Our verb is ersan. That's the imperfect of the verb to be. Again, it's third person plural. That's because we've got two subjects, hippos and sitos, kai, simple conjunction, joining them together. And that sentence is explaining what the gifts were. So you found the gifts. Oh, look, they were. We've got ersan at the start. They were, sort of emphatically saying they were this. So they were a horse and food. Hodangelos takeos ton siton epagen eitele, gar ton hippon prosteno kian agen. So again, we've got two clauses. We've got two verbs, epagen and eitele. Okay, and again, we've got one of those mid dots, semicolon separating them off. We've got only one subject for the two clauses, however. If we look through the second clause from eitele to agen, we don't have anything else that could be nominative. This often happens in Greek. So when we don't have a subject, we can infer it from the ending of the verb. We can see that eitele is still a third person singular verb, and we can recycle a subject from a previous clause. So the angelos is the subject of both of those verbs there. We've got gar again. So the second clause is explaining the first clause in some way. Our verb in our first clause is epagen. So let's smash this with our grammar hammer. Let's remove our augment. And we've got the second aorist stem at that point from the verb esteo. So phag, phi, alpha, gamma is the second aorist stem from the verb estio, I eat. We get it in the word esophagus, for example. So remove the augment, get the ending off, and you get the stem. Now, if you look up just phag or phago or something like that in the dictionary, you probably won't have much joy per se, but some dictionaries will direct you back to estio at that point, say it's the aorist to estio or something along those lines. There are also some really useful resources out there, tools online that let you parse stuff, a book called All the Greek Verbs that can help you look up stuff to familiarize yourself with these forms in different ways, and then they do eventually become second nature and they just sink in and you know them. Takeos, that always ending, omega sigma, is very common ending for adverbs, a word that tells us how the verb is being performed. Tositon is our direct object. Okay, so if we add all of that together, we get the messenger ate the food quickly, semicolon. Etele gar ton hippon prosteno kian agen. So gar, the second clause explaining the first. So here we're going to get a reason why he ate the food quickly. He ate the food quickly because for etele, that's the imperfect of etelo, I want, third person singular, so he wanted. That can go with an infinitive, and that's what agen is here. Now, if you work that out, well done. Again, that en ending, epsilon iota, nu is standard active present infinitive ending. Now, the infinitive is the name given to the bit of the verb that isn't conjugated, isn't attached to a person. It means unbounded because you haven't attached it to a person. You haven't limited it by saying I lead or you lead. You just say lead, to lead is how we always do them in English, to lead or to eat or to want or the like. And so the infinitive is often used with verbs that start an action, I want or I'm able or I like to or something like that, and then you want to specify what it is that you want or are able to do. That's what we've got here. Ton hippon is the object of agen. So it's not that he wants the horse, he wants agen to lead the horse. And then we've got a prepositional phrase, pros plus the accusative means of towards. So he wanted to lead the horse to his house. So he ate the food quickly, for he wanted to lead the horse to his house. Now, we don't have a word specifically meaning his in that sentence, but in Greek, when you've got a noun with a definite article and it's fairly clear who that noun belongs to, you can just supply it. He wanted to lead the horse to his house. So you don't need a specific word for his or her or their necessarily. So he wanted to lead the horse to his house. Al ha hippos epigen. Al is but. So he wanted to do this thing, but he can't because something else happens. So if you've got that strong contrast, he's trying to do thing X, but he can't because thing Y, then well done. That's what Allah does there. We've got a new subject, ho hippos, and then We've got a verb, epi again. Again, we're going to have to smash this with our grammar hammer. So we take off the augment, take off the ending. We're just left with fug, phi, upsilon, gamma. And that is the second aorist stem from peugo, I flee. So here we've got the third person singular aorist from peugo. So, but the horse fled. Hod anglos, ton hippon diokon, epesan. So we've changed subject back again. We've got hod angelos, so new subject again. Diokon, if you spotted that, that is the present participle from dioko, I chase. So remember, a participle is an adjective that we form from a verb. So it's going to have to agree with a noun. It's going to have a gender and a number and a case. It's going to be either masculine, feminine, or neuter. It's going to be either singular or plural. And it's going to be nominative, accusative, genitive, or dative. So looking at that diokon, we can see that is a masculine nominative singular. So it agrees with our subject, hod anglos, it agrees with the messenger. It's a present participle. That means the action it expresses, because as it's formed from a verb, it conveys an action, is going on at the same time as the action of the main verb. And that main verb is not itself present tense, epesan, it's the aorist from pipto, I fall. So again, smashing that with our grammar hammer, we take off the epsilon from the front, we take off the n ending from the end, and we've just got pes, and that's the aorist stem for pipto, I fall. So ton hippon, if we look, is the object of the participle. So before, ton hippon was the object of the infinitive, now it's the object of the participle. So remembering that a noun can be an object of a part of verb other than the main verb, important thing to remember there. But chasing the horse, the messenger fell. He etene este chalapa epen, adikos garme e colasen. So we've got two bits of direct speech. That's what the punctuation tells us straight away. We've also got the verb epen there. Probably you've been able to work that out, even if you couldn't remember what that came from, simply because it's surrounded by direct speech. Two parts of direct speech. We've got two clauses in the speech, plus epen, the verb of speaking. So he etene este chalapa and adikos garme e colasen, plus the verb of speaking in the middle. The subject in our first clause is he etene. And very obviously she's got the nominative article, she's got her nominative form. We've got the verb to be, which can't really have an object, so we've got an adjective instead, chalapa, telling us about Athena. Epen is the second aorist of Legon, I say. As I said, if you couldn't quite remember that stem, you probably worked it out from the context. It's surrounded by direct speech, so it's going to be a verb of speaking. Athena is cruel, he said. We've got no subject in this second clause, so we're going to have to use the verb ending to work out who our subject is. It's a third person singular, so let's keep Athena from the previous clause. He's making a continuous speech act about Athena. We've just popped the verb of speaking in between two parts of it. Ekolasen, again, dismantling that, smashing it with our grammar hammer. If we take off the epsilon, take off the ending, we're left with kolas. Remove the sigma, because this is a first aorist, and sigma removes some letters from its stem. You remember sometimes it gets added to the stem, sometimes it combines with a letter at the end of a stem, sometimes it just shoves it out of the way. Zeta is one of the letters it shoves out of the way. And we've got kolazdo, I punish. So we've got the third person singular aorist from kolazdo, I punish. Me is an accusative form of the personal pronoun, as we call it. I didn't talk about it because it seemed in the introduction, because I was pretty confident you'd be able to work it out. It's the same word as in English, and also the context will probably give you a good clue. Adikos, again, with that ors ending, we've got an adverb, so for she punished me unjustly. Legon de tutor ho angelos apetanen. So let's look through that. Legon, again, we've got a present participle. Okay, here from the verb lego, I speak. It's masculine nominative singular, again with that on ending, with diokon, we've got legon. So it's agreeing with our subject, who is, of course, again, ho angelos. Tutor is the object of Legon. Now, there are a number of ways in which we could work that out. The word order helps us a little bit there, and Greek word order will often be helpful like that. So Legon, the tutor, first of all, the tutor is nearer the Legon, and then angelos intervenes, so that will sort of make it clearer to us. Also, if we work out what our verb is, it's going to be quite clear that it can't be the object of our main verb, apetanen. Okay, so tutor is the object of Legon. Apetanen, as I say, is our main verb. Again, we're going to have to dismantle this, take bits off it, but if we look, we're not going to be taking the first letter off. We do have an augment, but if you remember, when you augment verbs that are compounded with a preposition on the front, you put the augment in between the preposition and the stem. So we're not going to be taking off the a to be left with petan. We're going to be taking out the e and replacing it here with an o to be left with apotan. And tan is really the bit that we're interested in. So we need to remember what tan is the aorist stem of. And that's the aorist from apotneisko, I die. Okay. Now remember that the present participle action is happening at the same time as the action in the main verb. So when we put all of that together, we will have, and saying this, as he was saying this, he died. The messenger died. Okay. 4. Finally, tagar tes Atenas Dora and kakodaimona. So looking through, our subject is Tadora. There isn't any other option. Tes Atenas has to be genitive. That's a genitive form. Kakodaimona clearly agrees with Tadora, and ga is a particle, and n is the thing that we're looking for the subject of in the first place. So it's got to be Tadora. Remember, neuter plurals take singular verbs. That's why we've got that third person singular form there in n of the imperfect tense of the verb to be. So, kakodaimona agrees with Tadora. Very common structure to have subject, verb to be in any tense, and then an adjective telling us something more about our subject. Tes Atenes sandwiched in the genitive. So, for Athena's gifts were unlucky. Again, that ga explaining. So as he said, this thing, he died. Why did he die? For Athena's gifts were unlucky. So, putting that all together. But the messenger no longer heard the noise or the voice, sorry, for Athena was no longer in the field. But the messenger found the goddess's gifts. They were a horse and food. The messenger ate the food quickly, for he wanted to lead the horse to his house. But the horse ran away. The messenger, chasing the horse, fell. Athena is cruel, he said, for she punished me unjustly. And saying this, the messenger died, for Athena's gifts were unlucky. I hope you've enjoyed working your way through this second passage of Greek. The story in the first passage had a happy ending, but this is probably more realistic in the sorts of things that happen in Greek texts. So keep thinking back over how to apply those principles, look through and be pleased at everything that you've learnt about Greek and how you've been able to work your way through that passage. And of course, if you need to find out more about Greek, we've got a range of stuff on our website, so please go to www.greeksummerschool.org.